What's going on, everybody? Kalupus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my first impressions of the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE. Now, as the name implies, this is the successor to the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, which honestly, in my opinion, is really one of Samsung's best phones. So in this video, I'll be going over the specs and features of this phone to give you a better idea of what to expect if you get it. Now, as always, if you do end up wanting to learn more about it, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about this phone, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE, compared to the S21 FE, we are getting a pretty similar, really high quality display. With this phone, we're getting a 6.4-inch dynamic AMOLED 2X display. It also has a 120Hz refresh rate, a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 403, and a 19.5:9 aspect ratio. So definitely a great display all around. We're getting real good image quality here with a nice sharp image, and with a dynamic AMOLED, the display is going to be real bright. The colors are nice and vibrant, and the viewing angles are really good too, so if you're outside in the sun, for example, or really in any kind of bright area, compared to something like an IPS LCD, for example, this phone will be a lot easier to see. And with a 120Hz refresh rate, the movement on the screen is a little bit faster and smoother compared to your standard 60Hz display. So this is going to make the phone feel a bit more premium to use. So in general, no matter what you're doing with your phone, whether you're doing more casual activities like browsing the web, using social media, stuff like that, or if you're doing something like watching videos or gaming, where the image quality is a bit more important, regardless, the display we're getting with the S23 FE here is great, so you will get a good experience no matter what. Now for storage, with the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE, we're getting 128GB of internal storage, and there's also another variant that has 256. So definitely a lot of internal storage here, but also keep in mind, unfortunately with this phone, seeing as it is technically a flagship phone, we're not getting microSD card expansion here. So if you are used to that feature, then keep in mind, you will have to be okay with not having it because when it comes to a higher end device like this, they typically don't support microSD card expansion. Now, on one hand, I feel like for everyday practical use, considering this phone has at least 128GB, if not 256GB of internal storage, depending on the variant you get, this is probably going to be enough for most people. So honestly, I feel like the vast majority of people who are really just doing everyday normal activities probably won't really need a microSD card that badly, because even if you have, say, a lot of photos and videos, for example, there's always stuff like Google Drive. So at the end of the day, it's probably not going to ruin your experience entirely. But at the same time, if you're used to having a microSD card, maybe you have all your data on one right now, transferring that stuff over to a phone like this that doesn't have microSD card expansion is probably not going to be very convenient. So if you are on the fence about getting a phone like this, then again, just keep in mind when it comes to higher end devices like this, chances are you're not going to get microSD card expansion. But aside from this, even at this point in late 2023, I do think 128GB is a pretty decent amount of storage. And again, if you do want more than this, you can always get the version that has 256. Now for security features, with the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE, we're getting a real nice in-display fingerprint scanner. As you can see, it works real well. So yeah, great there. And in addition to this, we're also getting Face Unlock here too. Now at this point in 2023, I feel like most phones are going to have both Face Unlock and a fingerprint scanner. I mean, if you look at pretty much any low-end Android phone, you are typically going to see both options. But when it comes to higher-end devices, for some reason, this isn't always the case. I mean, take the iPhone 15 for example. That phone unfortunately only has Face Unlock, so there's no fingerprint scanner. And while I haven't used the new Google Pixel phones yet, I know the 6a at least didn't have Face Unlock for whatever reason. So the point is, if you are looking for more of a higher end device like this, and you do want more versatility when it comes to security, again, this phone does have both Face Unlock and a fingerprint scanner, so it is going to give you that flexibility. But with other phones like this, having both features is not always guaranteed. Now taking a look at the camera setup here, with the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE, up front, we get a real nice looking hole punch design for the selfie camera. Now, I wouldn't expect it to have something other than a hole punch considering it's a much higher end device, but at the same time, if you compare it to something like the iPhone 15 with that dynamic island thing, designs of course can vary a bit, but I feel like this one looks nice and clean. But I do also want to point out that although this camera is only 10 megapixels compared to 32 with the S21 FE, the camera quality is actually still really good. As you can see here, pictures do come out real nice and clean. Portrait mode is also really good too. So yeah, if you are someone who takes selfies a lot, then in general, I don't think you'll be disappointed here. Aside from the selfie camera, on the back, we got a triple camera setup. with a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera. So compared to the predecessor, the camera setup is pretty much the same on the surface, except instead of a 12 megapixel main camera, we're getting a 50 megapixel main camera. And although megapixels aren't always everything, I mean, if you take the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE with a 12 megapixel camera and compare it to something like the A54 5G that has a 50 megapixel camera, the S21 FE is still a little bit better in my opinion, because being a higher end device, the hardware is just going to be better overall. But with the S23 FE, not only is this a higher end device too, that's going to have a higher end sensor and just hardware in general, but again, we also are getting an entire 50 megapixels here, so you can definitely expect to get some great photo quality. Now to give you an idea of what it can do, here's some pictures taken with the S21 FE, and considering this is a first impressions video, I don't really have a ton, but this will probably at least give you a general idea of what the camera can actually do. So as you can see here, the photo quality is really good. So if you are someone who's on one hand looking for a decently affordable phone, maybe you don't want to spend $1,000 on a super high-end flagship phone, but at the same time, maybe you do want really good photo quality. In that kind of situation, I do think the S23 FE is a great choice, because even though it's not quite as good as say an iPhone 15 Pro Max or a Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra or the S24 Ultra when it inevitably comes out, it is still definitely flagship quality, but at the same time, around $600-ish as of the recording of this video, it is quite a bit more affordable. And then also keep in mind for video, we are getting a max recording quality of 4K at 60 frames per second in the front camera and 8K at 24 frames per second in the rear camera. So definitely impressive here. Even at this point at the end of 2023, you don't really see a ton of phones that can record 8K videos nowadays. Now, I feel like it's kind of a niche feature because the average person making like TikTok videos and stuff is probably not going to be recording in 8K all the time, but I still feel like it's a really cool feature to have, so definitely nice there. And in case you're wondering, we also got a ton of other resolutions too. So as you can see, you can record in 1080p at 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second, 720p at 30, 4K at 30 and 60, and then again 8K at 24. So definitely a lot of options here. Now for the RAM and processor, with the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE, we're getting 8GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor. Now, while I haven't really used this phone a ton yet, I will say, from what I've seen so far, this is a really fast device. In fact, my personal phone as of right now is an iPhone 13, and compared to my iPhone 13, this phone is at least not slower. I don't know if it's really faster yet because again, I haven't really used it a ton, but it's around the same general performance range as my iPhone, which for a phone is honestly faster than most people are ever gonna need. So if performance is really important to you, then for the money, I do think this is a great choice. Because in general, although you can of course get phones that are technically faster, there's really nothing you're not gonna be able to do with this phone. So again, if performance is important to you, the S23 FE will be a great choice. Now I did run a benchmark test on this phone using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current device, and then comparing your results to these, and that's going to give you a better idea of where this phone stands performance-wise compared to your current device. But honestly, unless you're coming from a super high-end phone already, chances are this is going to be at least somewhat of an upgrade, so definitely keep this in mind because, again, despite being really affordable for what it is, the S23 FE is not a slow phone by any means. In fact, like I said before, it's basically just as fast as my iPhone 13, which, considering for a phone it's kind of old now, that's not really saying a ton, but still. At the time it was released, the iPhone 13 was pretty much the fastest phone you could get besides the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and that was really only a couple years ago. So to see that this phone is really just as fast, if not potentially faster, for a phone you can get for $600 or less, I am really impressed here. Now for the battery, with the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE, we're really not seeing much change from the S21 FE, with a 4500 mAh battery that also supports 25 watt fast charging. So yeah, on one hand, it's not the biggest battery you can get, but on the other hand, in my experience, the battery life has been pretty good so far. Now, I know with the S21 FE, despite mine having a Qualcomm processor, there was another version that had an Exynos processor, and although I haven't personally experienced it since I've never used that version, I have heard a lot about that phone overheating a lot and the battery life not being that great. And with the S23 FE, there is another version of this phone that does have an Exynos processor too. Now, I don't have that one. Again, this phone does have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor, so I really don't know a whole lot about the Exynos version, so if you are considering getting that one, then keep in mind the battery performance and everything might be a bit different. But again, in my experience so far, the S23 FE does have some pretty good battery life, and while I haven't hooked it up to a 25 watt fast charger, I have been using my wireless charger, and it does work pretty well. So in general, if you're not really that concerned about the battery, but you do want something at least decently reliable, then I do think the battery we're getting here will be good enough. For the software, the S23 FE does currently have Android 13, but considering this is not only a Samsung phone, but also a higher end one, you can definitely expect to get some great software support. In fact, I'm pretty sure we'll be getting Android 14 in the next few weeks, if not month or so definitely be prepared for that. And in addition to this, it should also be getting Android 15, 16, and 17, so definitely plenty of updates. So if you like to get one phone and keep it for a while without having to replace it, and you do want to make sure you have the latest software the whole time, then this phone will be a great choice for that. As far as other features go, the S23 FE does have NFC, which, considering the level of phone this is, that's not really a surprise. But just keep in mind, if you do like to use tap and pay, you won't have to worry about that with this phone. In addition to this, we're also getting IP68 dust and water resistance, so up to 1.5 meters for 30 minutes. Now, of course, I would not test that, and with a phone like this, I definitely recommend getting a case if you're going to be going out and using it everywhere. The only reason I don't have a case is because really this phone basically just stays inside for these videos, but if I were to use it and go anywhere with it, I definitely would get a case. But all the same, having extra dust and water resistance is always a nice thing. In addition to this, the S23 FE also does support Samsung DeX, so if you like to plug your phone into computer monitors and use it as like a mini computer kind of thing, keep in mind you can do that with this phone. Now, taking a look at the overall design, I do like it quite a bit better than the predecessor, because while the S21 FE had a plastic back, the S23 FE actually has glass, which I feel like it looks and feels a lot nicer. And in case you're wondering, this is Corning Gorilla Glass 5, so it's real durable too. It also has a nice aluminum frame, so we are getting some real high quality materials here. In addition to this, as you might expect from a higher end device like this, it does have a decent amount of weight to it, so if you are looking for something that overall has more of a premium feel, then this will definitely be a great choice. And again, I definitely think this is a great improvement from the S21 FE, because really my main complaint about that phone is that despite being a nice phone and being decently well built, it really didn't feel very premium or high end. Not only is this phone a really high end device that provides a lot of value for the money, but also looks and feels the part too. But in conclusion, my overall first impressions of the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE. In general, for a $600 phone, I feel like we're really getting a ton of value here. Keep in mind, again, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra is like literally double the price. But yet with the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE, we're getting decently similar performance, a really nice flagship level camera, features like NFC, Samsung DeX support, wireless charging, a nice design with more premium materials, a really nice display, and a ton of storage. Now, a case could be made for something like the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE being maybe like a half or even a third of the price of this phone, and being pretty similar when it comes to specs and features. And although I do think this phone is better in a lot of ways, if you are looking for just a generally nice phone and you don't want to spend a ton of money on it, then yeah, sure, you can get a much cheaper phone than this and still get a pretty good experience. But if you are really after that flagship experience, and you are considering getting maybe an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, and you are considering spending maybe that $1,200 or $1,300, $1,400 on a phone, then in that case, despite not being necessarily the cheapest option, I do think the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE is definitely a great alternative. And in addition to this, keep in mind, when the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE was first released, it was going for like $700 or $800, and over the course of about a year, it went down to like $300 or $400, and sometimes if you get it refurbished, you can even get it for $200 or less. And I really don't see a reason why the same thing won't happen to the S23 FE in the future. So if you are looking for a phone like this, but maybe you don't want to spend $600 on a phone, then keep in mind, after a few months, I'm sure this phone will end up being quite a bit more affordable. But this concludes my first impressions video of the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE. Again, if you want to learn more about this phone, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about it, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.